This week is a retro gaming week for us at the Drunken Guardian Gaming Podcast. Every first week of the month, Danny and I talk about past retro games from the 80s and 90s and what we loved about them. Let us know your favorite retro games by emailing us at thedrunkenguardian@gmail.com, and we can mention them on our next retro episode. Enjoy the nostalgia. Hey guys, we finally got Danny back, my best bud. What's up, Danny? Welcome to the show again.
Hello. Well, glad to be back. How's it doing?
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yep.
So I'm actually curious, since we haven't had you on for a while, what have you been playing lately? How are you liking those games?
I've been playing the PS5. I got that, 2 weeks after
Lucky you.
the system came out. Yeah, my wife, she's Superwoman, tracked that shit down for me. But yeah, I've been playing every PS5 game there is, Godfall, Demon Souls, Miles Morales, everything. Beat the Miles Morales. Got pretty far in Demon Souls before I got bored again. What else? Godfall was a horrible game. Had pretend. Looks great, looks phenomenal, but plays horrible.
Yeah, so I've been hearing everywhere it's super repetitive, I guess. Then it's not so much fun unless you have co-op.
Yeah, I mean, even I haven't been able to try co-op because I don't know anybody who has the game. But that may seem like the Sony saving grace a little bit, only because anything's a little more fun with somebody than by itself.
Yeah,
but the game's just boring, just really super boring.
Okay, I know you've been playing Yakuza Like a Dragon. How you liking that so far?
That's great. I mean, that's a game that I love RPGs. As we did our top PS2 game, PS1 games, whatever it was, most of mine were RPG games.
Yeah,
this was pretty much the same. This is right in there with modern day new age RPG. Great storyline, super long story. The gameplay's fun, the mechanics are good. It's just a fun overall game. It's right up there with Persona 5 that came out and the Final Fantasy for me. It's good. So I've been addicted to that. Before that, I think it was just there. I got like whatever random game I can find. Trying to test the power of the PS5. And it's just a powerful system. It's a fun system to have, especially if you're coming from PS4. It is a night and day difference. I didn't get to have the Pro. People do like the Pro, but
yeah,
you definitely tell the difference, even on crappier older games.
I recorded with Randy for our last episode, which I'll be editing today and tomorrow. But we talked about what games we're looking forward to, PS5 included, of course. Hopefully we get one in the next couple months. Yeah. Are there any games you're looking forward to?
Yeah, the Returnal. That looks like a fun game. Kind of like Control.
Mm-hmm.
Ironically, I'm actually looking forward to the PS5 version of Control because I played a little bit of it on the PS4. I don't know, something about it. I liked it. I'd like to see it done a little bit, so they're gonna redo it for the PS5. So I'll get that.
Frame rate's better on it too, so maybe you'll enjoy it more too.
Yeah, I think that'd be part of it. Part of it be the frame rate to make me enjoy it a little more. What else? Oh, Outriders is probably the game I'll be addicted to whenever that comes out.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one too.
What is that fake game? That fairy-looking RPG type game, open world, Kenya.
Oh, Kenya, Kenna.
Yeah, the Bridge of Spirits. That game I'm looking forward to, big time. That's pretty much those are the main games I'm looking forward to.
Okay, so mostly, understandably, since you have the new system, so understandably, it's more the new gen stuff coming up.
Yeah, I don't know of any old gen stuff that's coming out that I would be looking forward to. There's nothing really that I know of.
Yeah, well, for me specifically, like I mentioned in the last episode too, it was Hitman for me, which is coming out tomorrow while we're recording this.
I just can't do that.
I know you don't. You can't do the stealth games.
It's not.
But we talked about that too. How like that kind of game is not really for everybody because it just takes a lot of patience and kind of just you're standing around or observing for like a good hour or maybe even more before you even decide to do something. But yeah, but it makes sense. It makes sense what you're looking forward to right now. And those are all good games that hopefully I'll be able to try myself in the next couple months. If it
Hmm.
wasn't for fucking Sony
We definitely have to get the
lying to
Outriders
us.
together. We definitely have to.
Yeah,
That's the
definitely.
game.
Hopefully, it's something to replace Destiny. You know, as
Yeah.
much as I love Destiny, it still has its faults,
Right.
and there are times where I'm ready to just move on to something else. So hopefully, it's a good replacement.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much I was looking through the list of stuff, and everything else is either just another port or not really sure, but like what it is, like the Dark Eye. No clue what it is, but you know,
Yeah,
we'll try them out. You know, I was disappointed, obviously, in Cyberpunk. I thought that game would be a game to keep me
that's
entertained for a
actually
little bit, but
the next thing I was going to ask you is, what are your thoughts
that
on the
was the game
whole?
that's the game I was playing before Yakuza. Was the Cyberpunk. I mean, it's a great game.
Mhm.
Don't get me wrong. It's a beautiful looking game. The parts that work. It didn't bother me the crashing because in the beginning when that was part of the aspect it would crash because on PS5 the load times are almost non-existent. So even a game like that, you have maybe I don't know 20 seconds of loading, 30 seconds maybe at most.
Mhm.
You know, I think I clocked it like 2 minutes to get back to the game. You know, from after once it crashes to get to come back up, it's not bad.
Yeah,
We've seen worse. You know, if it
yeah.
was longer, then obviously it wouldn't be playable. So it wasn't that
So
bad.
the experience is better, obviously, with the PS5 because of the loading and everything.
Yeah, and then going in between sections and playing a game, there's no load times, and that just makes any game period that I've been playing on the PS5 a little more enjoyable. The
Yeah.
fact that it's that transition that you know, like I've been watching this stupid show on HBO, and they had this they called it the Dorothy theory. Basically, it's the time in between something goes to start. People don't like to wait. If you press enter,
Yeah.
you press enter, you better start up right away. You
I
know,
think with the convenience of anything internet wise or just the speeds of everything, patience is not something that has developed very well in society.
yeah. I mean, it's not even just patience; it's just what you've been promised. It's what they promised us in the PS3. Not even
Yeah.
PS4. They promised us since the PS3 no load times, and
Yeah.
I feel like it's
They just hide the
finally,
load times.
yeah, and they hid them, and you can tell obviously in some games, but you tell a huge difference when you play a game like Yakuza, for instance, and it's on your SSD, and the load you see the load screen pop up for a millisecond and go away. Like not enough time to even read the stupid tip that it gives you. It will be that fast, and like you feel better about playing the game and not really waiting and keep going. Or Destiny, for instance, is a great example. I played with Danny, and by the time I loaded into his game before he fucking even loaded into his game.
Yeah.
Like literally before
And I
he
was the
loaded into his.
host.
Yeah, he's the host, and I'm loaded into the
uh,
game. I'm like waiting for him for 2 minutes.
yeah.
Like literally waiting. It's like crazy stuff like that. Like you see a huge difference. It's just you don't even see your ship in the air. He goes up, the ship goes up in the air, goes back down to the planet. It's like there. Like wow, this makes a difference. It sounds silly, but it does make a difference in every single game you play.
Yeah, no, of course, it definitely enhances the experience just not having
Hmm.
to wait in between those things and you jump right into the action or whatever it is you're doing.
Yeah.
I do have a question since we're talking about cyberpunk. In with the controversy and everything, what are your thoughts on the lawsuits? Do you think they're justified? Do you think it's people are kind of making a big deal over it, or
No,
what are your
I think they're
thoughts?
justified. I mean, the game wasn't done. Um, when you go to play a game, you expect a 100% done game, and it's not. I mean, the glitches that I have in the game aren't just the game crashing. I mean, that and throwing right game crashing at once every 20 minutes is a horrible fate. But there's times you play the game and every single model is just standing there, and you can just walk past them like nothing ever happened. Or all of a sudden they all glitch out and they'll attack you, or a cop comes and just destroys you. I mean, you don't know what's gonna happen, so it's sometimes kind of hard to play the game. And again, it's a beautiful looking game. It has so much potential. You want to see what it can do or should do. If you had to wait another year, you should have just did it. People would have loved it in a year. You know, they wouldn't have forgotten
Speaking
about it.
speaking of a year, so I mean they are talking about trying to fix the game, and they had announced that they're going to release all their DLCs for free. They're going to release plenty of DLCs, and of course, alongside a bunch of patches to fix everything. So,
Mhm.
do you think it's somewhat like what they did with The Witcher? With The Witcher 3, it was very glitchy. At times, it was unplayable, especially the frame rate issues that a lot of people had.
Mhm.
But eventually, it was redeemed. Eventually, it made out to be a amazing game. Do you think they'll be able to redeem themselves with this one?
I think the difference between The Witcher and this is, yeah, it had some frame rate issues and some loading textures, but this game's literally crashing people's PS5s. Like, we're getting blue screens because of a game. Like, that shouldn't happen. You can't play the game. You can't proceed to the game. You can't keep playing because the game doesn't allow you to because it's not done right.
Hmm.
And you don't know when it's gonna happen. It's just not a certain point in the middle of the game where they can patch. It's at any point of time the game can just crap out of you and you won't be able to proceed. And you have to load back. And God knows how far you load it, you're done.
So if they fixed all that, let's say 6 months, because I doubt that everything will be perfect in a month or two. But let's say 6 months to a year. Do you think they'll be able to, if they fix all the problems, fix the frame rate, fix any crashing, along with getting all this free DLC, is that enough for you? Do you think it'd be worthy to like buy the game and try it out again?
Oh yeah, but the question was, do you think I think the lawsuits are valid? And I think yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean they should have waited the 6 months to a year, whatever it was.
Oh, of
If it was
course.
just a few if there's just a few minor glitches with the graphics or whatever, or some frame rate not load up right away on the older system, people wouldn't have cared too much. I mean, they would have made fun of it. Don't get me wrong. They did it for like Morrow and all types of stuff, where they made fun of it, but
Yeah.
it wouldn't have been this horrible instance that happened where people literally put the game down because it's like, fuck, this is not playable anymore. That's what it is on the PS4 and the old Xbox. It's not playable. It's 100% not playable. It's a game that looks so bad that it doesn't even look like it's near what is promised. Because I've seen
Yeah.
footage. It's like night and day difference from even the PS5 to the PC. And they talk about the PC a lot. The PS4 plays decent. It looks great, but the
Hmm.
PS4 looks horrible, and it's really sad. Because the game is great. So much is taken out for them to try to, the atmosphere of the world, the people, NPCs, all the stuff gets taken out because they're trying to compensate. And
Yeah.
you're not gonna be able to fix that. So the game should have came out on the PS4, and the game wasn't originally supposed to be on just the PS5 PC. I mean, it was supposed to be a year ago come out on the PS4 only. And if they
Hmm.
knew that these problems, they should adjust it. And
It
should have
looks
waited
like
a year.
it's just gonna be meant to be a new gen game at this point.
And they could have just called it a new gen game. That's it.
Yeah.
I think they would have saved themselves a lot of lawsuits if they just called it a next gen game and not put it on the PS4.
Yeah.
Nobody would have been butthurt about it, but they did, and that's why they're getting sued of the wazoo. And again, rightfully so.
Yeah. Well, we can go on about this, but we have literally 2 or 3 episodes just talking shit about CD Projekt Red and the
Mhm.
lawsuits and all that. So I just wanted to know your opinion on it and your view. So for once, me and you see eye to eye over something like that.
Oh yeah.
Uh, definitely justified. But today's episode, we're going to be focusing on just a nice, fun main topic, which is me and Danny were old farts. We've been playing games since since birth, practically.
30 years now.
So yeah, we're both over 30 years old, and we have a lot of gaming behind us, and we decided on doing a monthly retro gaming theme thing. So every episode, me and Danny will be talking about some old retro games that we like and are fond of. So we'll talk about those, and hopefully it'll convince you guys to jump in and play some old retro games. Play what is it, like those emulators, or like, let's say, the NES classic stuff. Maybe you buy one of those and kind of give those things a try. So yeah, we'll move on to the next segment, which is that. All right, Danny. So, what would be one of your picks? I guess we got two today. So, I guess what is your first pick for one of your retro games?
One of my first, besides like the classic Mario, obviously when I first got my first system was Nintendo.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, old, but not as old. I didn't have an Atari. I did end up playing them later on as you grew up, but when I was a kid and first started playing games, the first game was Mario, but then also at the same time was Bubble Bobble. Now I know that sounds funny, and people are like, "What the hell?" But it was a fun little, stupid, addicting puzzle, almost like a puzzle game.
Yeah,
But it's kind of reminds you of Dr. Mario in a bit, where it,
I would have said kind of like Tetris but in reverse.
well, not Dr. Mario, Donkey Kong, kind of like Donkey
Donkey
Kong,
Kong. Okay.
where it had
Oh wait, you know what I'm thinking about instead? I'm thinking, wait, am I thinking of like the literal bubbles you're shooting up in the ceiling
you
or the
shoot
platforming?
you shoot them out and they platform at the same time, kind of like
Okay.
Donkey Kong, where you do the little platform and jumping on the jump over things. The same concept. You jump over, like a Dig Dug type of game, whatever. I don't know what you would call
Mm-hmm.
it. It had a combination of all that together. Bright colors, a song that stuck in my head to this day. You know,
Yeah.
like if you played that game and if you beat the game like I have, it's also another thing. This is one of the first few games that because I had, and it's one of those things when you have a game as a kid, it's the only game you have, really. You only have one or two. You don't have a 5 gig, 5 terabyte fucking hard drive full of games.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you play it to death and you usually beat them. And that one without a code. And it was weird and it was fun and every level was harder than the next and kind
How
of
many
challenging. You
levels?
have to think of 100 levels. It's 100 levels. And then later on, after you beat them when I was a kid and I beat the game. I beat it a little older, but I did beat the game and it was the weirdest ending. It just like kind of ends. You fight a boss, which is weird because you don't really have. There's no bosses in any of the levels except for the last one.
Huh.
And after you beat them, it's like come back with a friend. And I'm like, what the fuck is this? Like really?
Oh, is that how it ended? It just left you like, okay, now play again with somebody else.
Yeah. And then later on, like as an adult, you go back to that game and you read about it or you whatever, and you learn that that's actually one of the first few games that had multiple endings. No games
Oh.
back then had multiple endings. And it's like, for me, I feel like it's the first one that had a multi ending for me. Because if you go back with a friend and you do play with two players and you beat the game, it gave you the story, which was about the whole thing is about two brothers got turned into monsters in this cave and then trying to find their girlfriends. So once you beat the game, you get turned back into a boy, and then they're given a code, and the code is for basically like a sped up version of the game, a harder version, better version of the game.
Like a speed mode?
Yeah,
A speed run mode?
yeah. And then once you beat that, then you get the true ending, which is the two brothers get turned back into humans, and the first one was the two brothers find their girlfriends. That's what it was. The two brothers they turn back into humans and they find their girlfriends.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you beat the game, the speed one, the two brothers find their girlfriend, and then their parents come and get them, and then that's how it ends. Again, I didn't know this, but like it's one of those games where it's like you want to try and get all 300 levels because you want to see what this is, and you have to do it with a friend. You can't do it by yourself. So
Mm.
it's like a multiplayer game. You have to come in and be
Okay.
guys and you out. So it was very interesting, and again, it was very puzzle based, a puzzle
Yeah,
platform.
and I'm sure like with the generation now, like and it's a cutesy game that probably most people would think like yeah it's a kid's game, but not really so much. You make us you're explaining it as if it's actually challenging.
Yeah, it's one of the hardest, like Mega Man. Like how Mega Man is one of the hardest games. It looks bright, colorful, all this stuff. But Mega Man is the hardest fucking game in the world. Like you
Yeah,
can't play. Most people who play games now, most kids or teenagers, or whatever, who play games now, cannot go back and play Mega Man. It's too hard.
they
The
need
games,
they need save files nowadays.
yes, you need to be able to save points and checkpoints and blah blah blah. The games had none. Bubble Bobble
Yeah,
was you had a bunch of lives. That's it. You lost your lives, game over. Pac-Man's all the same thing. You learn your patterns. This had similar. It did have patterns that you do. Was very similar to Pac-Man. You learn after a while to beat it, but it was very challenging. You know, and I think
Yeah.
that's what a lot of games are missing. Nowadays is that, and they have it, and they replace it for storyline, obviously, and they replace it for other things. What they were trying to compensate back then, because again, you needed to be able to play that game for months at a time, and because it was your only game, you have the patience to play 50 levels a day and start over. So that's why I picked that. I just thought a lot of people should at least give it a try.
Yeah, keep an eye out for them too. If anybody goes out to barcades, any type of barcade stuff,
Yeah,
they always tend to have those type of retro games. Just like I pretty much see Bubble Bobble in any barcade place that I've ever been to so far in New York. So you never
yeah.
know.
It's one of those games where people sleep on. I mean, you go, oh, that's silly, but it's actually quite fun. You know.
Yeah. For me, sticking to the Nintendo system, playing the first Metal Gear game. It's definitely not the first game I've ever played, but I did play that game back in the day, and it was one of those games that changed or started, I would say, the whole stealth genre thing. So that game was a lot of fun, and I remember when I first played it. I didn't own the game. I had borrowed it from a friend. Um, so I played it for a little bit and I couldn't get into it. I couldn't understand the concept of like hiding instead of like shooting everything
Yeah.
or attacking everything. And then eventually, with my young mind, I was just like, oh, okay, I'm not supposed to be seen. I'm not supposed to get caught. I'm supposed to go around these people and this and that. And then you find these little intricacies in the different type of level designs and doing certain things in order to progress towards the end goal of getting to the Metal Gear and fighting a big boss and everything like that at the end. So Metal Gear was a lot of fun. I guess graphic wise, it was pretty
ET-ish?
typical. No, I mean
No, it was bad,
ET-ish.
but
We're talking like
oh,
Atari.
it's probably like Zelda. It reminded me of Zelda a lot.
I would. I don't know if you remember like another game, and I'm sure we'll probably talk about this in another retro episode. But you ever played like Commando,
Yeah.
the Nintendo?
Hmm.
It reminds me a lot like that. Like graphically, it was like you can see slightly the details of Snake in his pixelated form,
Hmm.
but it was enough to be like, wow, look at these graphics. Like this is different. This is interesting. And then like of course like the environments, like you could actually see quote unquote details of like the vehicles and the trucks and like the buildings, the compounds, and the lasers and all that stuff around there. So it was pretty cool
Yeah,
to
for it
kind of feel
time
like a
back in the day,
spy.
we have you know, the the graphics on them were a little better. I mean, they weren't obviously what they are today, but they were. You can tell what you're looking at. You look at
Yeah.
Mario, it's just like a blob, and you kind of see a mustache on the guy, but it looks kind of weird. But this, it looked like a guy who was walking around. I mean, the guys with guns when they had the walking up and down, the stealth guys. You can tell they had guns in their hand. The
Yeah.
trucks looked like trucks. They were like drawn trucks. You know, and simply for the tanks and the buildings and stuff like that, because they tried to put in that Zelda or Commando like blocky world more texture into the backgrounds, which just made the game interesting.
Yeah. I think it was also, just the textures and the backgrounds and stuff. Even though a lot of the backgrounds were static, there were still more details than most people were used to for a Nintendo game.
Yeah, and you felt like you were in the woods. You felt like
Yeah.
you're an army game type of thing, and that's what most people they don't. Nowadays, you think of Metal Gear, and you think of this grandiose storyline, but back then it was just an
It
army
was
game. You
simple.
snuck around and killed people and shoot. That's it.
Yeah.
You know, but when I never played it as a kid. I actually only played it after the PS1 version came out,
Uh-huh.
the remake or whatever you want to call them. I went back and I
The
played it.
Metal Gear Solid is what they
Yeah,
called
the
it, like the
first Metal Gear
PS1
Solid. Yeah,
version. Yeah.
the
Yeah.
first Metal Gear Solid after that came out. I didn't even know about Metal Gear until my cousin and somebody told me about it, and then I went and I
Uh,
played it. And you see a lot of homage they did in the Metal Gear Solid. The way the trucks look, the way you go underneath the trucks, is like they did in the game, in the
Right.
original, and the tanks and everything is like wondering why the tank just stood in the middle of this fucking battlefield. Because it does seem weird. Giant tank, you should get shot with it, but you don't. You walk underneath it, you climb underneath it for a reason because it's supposed to be homage towards the old games. And they did a great job at putting those details into it.
Yeah, and it was rare. It was really rare to see a stealth game up until that point because even before that, I really honestly can't think of anything at the moment that was truly stealth based
Yeah,
aside from a Hideo Kojima game like Metal Gear. Because after the PS1 game came out, that's when the popularity for stealth games rose, and then we had Splinter Cell,
definitely.
and that's when the genre really popped. So
Hitman.
Metal Gear, Nintendo, that started it all. What do you got for your second one?
Contra, the original OG Contra, done as an army game. It was one of again. It started with games I beat as a kid, and one of those games one of the few games I've had that I loved playing, and it was also the first Konami code. I didn't even know it was,
The cheat code, yeah.
the cheat code of down on left, right, BA start. And it was the first time where it was actually that was the first game I ever beat.
Oh,
The first game I ever beat because of the cheat code. You know,
yeah.
get 30 lives. No, it's hard to beat. And it's talked about how they did that cheat code because they got the game and the testing was too hard. So they figured if they give you 30 lives and they enter this cheat code. Actually, one of those, I think it's the second game ever to have the cheat code, to have the Konami code. The first one was some flight game.
Was it like
God,
Gradius?
Gradius, yeah.
Gradius,
That was
right?
the first one to have it because same thing where they thought the game was too hard, so they give it extra lives. So
Right.
they put that same concept into Contra, and people loved it because of it. And the code actually became famous because of that game. What people don't remember that it had in Glide, they remember it had in Contra, and most people remember doing it in Contra. And
Yeah,
Konami,
yeah.
that code's been around. That code in some fashion is almost in every Konami game.
Yeah,
Every
whether it be an Easter egg or an actual cheat code, you could pretty much use it in every. You'll see it in every Konami game.
Yeah, like even today's games like Dead by Daylight has a Silent Hill character, and if you do it because Silent Hill is Konami, you get certain like amulets and medals stuff like that.
Oh, I
Yeah,
didn't know that.
yeah.
Yeah,
You get some gear for doing it with Silent Hill characters, and
yeah.
it's a lot of games to this day, you know, that's used the cheat code. And if it's Konami, it's gonna have it somewhere. It might do something silly, like Metal Gear Solid is just like, hey, don't stop trying to cheat. Like he literally looks at the innocent Snake Eater, I think. He's like looks at the camera, he's like, stop doing that. Like, cut that out. Stop it. Like, wait, because you're trying to cheat. So,
Yeah,
but it's stupid
yeah.
things like that. But that what Contra made it famous, and it was a very simple game. And it might as well have been very similar to Grandia. I mean, yeah, you
Did
had your
you
guy jump up and down, but as you just still just shooting left and
mm,
right, side scrolling shooter game.
you beat the game alone, or did you do co-op at all?
No, I actually I don't think I ever played that really with anybody. I think I just by myself.
Mm.
It's one of those games where I don't remember the ending, but I know for a fact I beat it. I just
Oh
remember
yeah, of course.
using that cheat code. And again, the Contra games are everybody knows Contra, but nobody can really remember any of the levels besides the beginning.
Yeah, I remember the boss. Well, I remember a boss. I remember aside from the beginning, I remember like a giant
Alien,
tentacle monster thingy
yeah,
alien thing where you enter the building afterwards, and that's as far as I remember.
yeah, and all that was supposed to be. It was based off the popularity of Predator, and they made
Yeah.
when they ported over the NES version from consoles from PC and whatever that like Commodore or something. When they ported it over, they want the graphics. They gave it this Arnold Schwarzenegger looking guy that they drew from Predator, and they drew this alien guy in the background, which was similar to that first boss that you fight.
Uh,
Actually, I think it's like the second boss. The first boss is like a wall.
Yeah, it's just like a
It's a
wall of
wall with
turrets
guns.
and stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
wall of turrets. But yeah, I mean, most people don't remember that, and they remember the weird because it changed from the 2D from the side scrolling to the weird you shooting up right after you get through the wall. And most people remember that, and it was a fun, unique shooting game with the power ups and things like that that made Gradius look silly. So
Yeah. Well, we're gonna do an upgrade for the next system. My final game would something that I talked about in a previous episode as well. So for the Super Nintendo is Actraiser. Did you ever get to play Actraiser?
yeah, I mean, I didn't have a Super Nintendo. I played a lot of the Super Nintendo on I had Genesis and the Genesis 64.
The Genesis 64. Yeah, that upgrade thing. Yeah.
Yeah, the upgrade thing. So that was my that's what I had at that time because those were that were battling.
Okay. Yeah, I think Super Nintendo is by far my favorite system ever. Growing up, gaming at all. But Actraiser was, one of me. I would say like my top 5 on my list of favorite Super Nintendo games, aside from like Link to the Past or Chrono Trigger, etc. Actraiser, for those who've never played it or heard of it, it had a very strange mesh of genres, which was it's like an overhead city creation simulator where you kind of helped towns and build roads and buildings and crops and stuff and help the cities grow in population. And then every now and then they'll get attacked by monsters. So what you would do is send in like a character kind of. It was in the lore of the story, you send like they send like a statue, and the statue turns to life. So your avatar is essentially like this guy that looks like Thor but with a sword. So he turns to life, and the game turns into a side-scrolling hack and slash
Like
with like some
a lot like
it looks a
Castlevania.
lot like Castlevania. So so the music was just badass. Like even now I could remember the music, and I think that was my favorite part of the game is just how epic the music was whenever you fought the levels and the bosses. And then, when you switch back to the building aspect, it was nice and calm and kind of like I guess maybe like gothic or very spiritual, like choruses, and you could hear like what do they call those piano, the organs, like organ music and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So you can kind of the soundtrack was just great, is what I'm saying. So those things really stick with you if you ever get to play that game. How'd you like it?
I remember hating the farm mode, as I called it.
Mm-hmm.
Remember hating doing the village stuff, wanting to do just the battles, the fighting, stuff like that. But that was how I was with a lot of the RPG games when I used to play it back in the day. I mean, you used to play like Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy, whatever, where I would let you do the walking around, and
Yeah,
when it gets to a fight, you pass me control and I do all the fighting because it's that's the aspect of the games that I like to do.
yeah.
The strategy part, the walking around looking for shit. I hate it, and that's how this was to me. I felt like it was the building the town and the roads and all that stuff, all that weird simulator stuff. To me, it was boring. So I never really got into it. I just wanted it to be Castlevania. I just wanted to play it. And again, I played it a little after. I played it on the PC as an emulator.
Okay.
So I never played it when it first came out.
Okay. It would have been nice for them to re-release it in some sort of way or remaster and kind of have a way to skip the simulator stuff if you wanted to and just do the levels. That would have been interesting.
Yeah. I mean, but that's what the beauty of the game was, I think, is that it was something
The
new.
mesh of the two.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I really do feel like people thought it was just like a Castlevania ripoff. So I think a lot of people were like, why would I want to play this? And I would play Castlevania, but it was because of everything that it can do and everything it could be. So that's why I always thought that was an interesting game.
Yeah, it was good. And then it gets harder and harder too, because they do like this Mega Man style thing when you go through a level and you fight a boss at the end, and once you finish doing all the levels, there's like this gigantic crater where the main villain, the main boss is. So you go in there and you basically do a boss rush of all the bosses you played through the entire game in order to get to the final boss. So that was always the hardest part for me, was getting through that point.
Like I started playing in 88, 89 games. The game came out like 93. So at that point, I think I would have been more into like the Contras and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I mean, as for NES, and I had my, sorry, as for the NES, Super NES, and I missed out on the Super NES as a kid. That's the one system that, a lot of people say, oh yeah, it's the best system out there. It probably was, but I missed out on
Yeah.
it because of all the RPG type games, all the really unique games, the Final Fantasies, the original Final Fantasies that I've, again, on the PC beat, and on the ports, emulators galore. When
Yeah.
emulators every fucking NES game there is, because I never had one, and there were so many gorgeous games on the NES, and that was one of them that was very unique. And Genesis didn't have that. They had, that they had the Mortal Kombat, they had the Sonics, they had the action commercial games. But
Yeah, they had their own niche.
yeah, but if you were like a true gamer at the time, you knew about the NES, you knew what it was, and then you know you were able to take that risk on games. And you really had to do some research when you go into a, what would they what would the game places be back then? EB Games, or
EB Games, Toys R Us.
yeah, not so much Toys R Us.
They had oh god, what was Funko Land? Was it
Funko Yeah, I think
Funko
Funko
Land was another
would
one?
have been a big
Yeah,
one. I know Square had a game store too.
really.
But it wasn't Square Enix. It wasn't part of it. It was called Square something. But it was a game place where I used to
They were
go and
called
play games.
SquareSoft at one point, I think, right? SquareSoft. It was SquareSoft, and then they got to Square Enix. It was somewhere along those lines.
Yeah, they got bought out by Square Enix. But it was, I can't remember the name of it. But those are the games. But anyway, when you go there, you would either have to talk to somebody who played these games before, or because there wasn't no internet, so you can't just like
Yeah.
look online and say top 10 games.
Either that, or you're just waiting until the magazine comes out with a review, so you could decide
Yeah.
then.
Yeah, and even that, or the biggest place to do is Blockbuster, rent and try. Which
Yeah,
is
that
how
was
a lot of
that
games
was
that we
our
did.
bread and butter.
Yeah, when we tried every single game that looked interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, that got super popular in the PS1 days, that type of thing, but still,
Right.
that was up there. Yeah. And then the thing about the Super Nintendo is it outlasted a lot of consoles. Outlasted, obviously, the Genesis, because it was made to compete with them after the fact. It's basically like the PS2 version of the PS1, whatever, or Xbox, whatever. Anyway, but Sega CD came out afterwards, and Sega CD was supposed to be the Nintendo crusher, and it fucking bombed because they
Yeah.
wanted to play realism games. And
Yeah.
that was just weird. I remember
Things got expensive, and then the quality just wasn't like what was expected.
Yeah, because they were doing, again, Genesis was the commercial version of games. So Demolition Man had a game that had actual footage in it, from the Demolition movie, and other footage, new footage from the characters. Predator had a game. They had one weird, which I still remember this. I can't remember the name of it. It was like the house is haunted, and you play as the house almost, capturing thieves.
Deception?
What's it called? Deception?
There's a game called Deception. I remember it for like the PS1. I don't know if it was even earlier than that though.
Hey, you played it. It was only live. It was only live footage. It was realism.
Night Trap?
Night Trap. That's what it was.
Ah.
Games like that. A lot of games that they try to pull out. They tried to do something. It's just, it wasn't the essence for what the games were. And Super NES kept rolling and kept growing, and spitting out more games, and the quality of the games got better.
Yeah.
And they kept spitting them out, and everything else burned.
Quality, honestly, has been getting better and better nowadays. Like, if you look back at the past, systems, it kind of seemed like they were going to lead towards this whole crash of the gaming economy again, like ET did back in the day,
Hmm.
because they were throwing out a lot of shovelware games out there. There was a lot of trash being released just for the sake of making some money. But nowadays, I guess developers and publishers are a lot more cautious with what they release.
Yeah, and there's also they spend more money into marketing and you know making sure
Yeah,
people will play and like it and actually enjoy it. And it's different from back then where a game like ET, for instance, was done in like 3 months or 6 months.
yeah.
Like there's some like ridiculous time frame just to coincide with the movies.
I think it was like 12 weeks.
Yeah, it was like
Yeah.
so you got like 3 months to make a game.
Yeah.
It they did what they did. That's what happens, when nowadays they're worried about quality of the game, making sure
Of
like
course, because they're spending the money, so they got to make sure that they get the money back.
yeah.
It's now it's turned into Hollywood because
Mhm.
the gaming industry makes more than Hollywood now, and even Hollywood is very cautious with what they release to make sure they get their money back.
Yeah. And I think back then they just thought it was a fad and just wanted a game to come out to use it
Right?
as they saw the game as a toy. That's it. Very simple toy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And movie makes money by selling toys and Star Wars figures, things like that. Like Star Wars wouldn't be Star Wars without the figures because kids wouldn't be playing with the figures, which made them want to watch the movie even more, which made them
Right.
grow up and love the movies, and it just snowballed. And that's what they wanted to do with games. They just saw it as a toy. They have a toy, they have a game, they play it, they love it even more. They want to watch the movie, they want to see the sequel. And it
Yeah.
doesn't work that way. That's not what they're designed for. Games are its own niche, where it is own, as they learned obviously from games like Super NES, like Actraiser, where yeah, they tried something new and they tried a new genre of games, but they were trying and trying to create their own stories and entertainment, not just a commercial
Hmm.
based Demolition Man to promote the movie. Because that's all
Hmm.
that
And
was.
sell toys.
Giant
Yeah.
promotion just to sell the movie. And not to sell toys, they wanted a new version of selling toys, which is was supposed to be their game. And
Yeah.
you can't do that. And essentially then how they what they grew and what they lost and things like that.
Yeah. It's an interesting talk to go over about like the history of it and how the game industry is now compared to back then. But
I mean, there's other games, we'll talk about, Suburban Commandos, the Street Fighter series, Mortal Kombat series, all those that created our childhood because they all
yeah,
had a piece,
yeah.
whether playing Marvel vs. Capcom or, you know, no, or you're playing,
And we always tried a little bit of everything. So I guess everybody will notice that. I guess everything that we choose every month will be a little different genres, different styles, different whatever, because your taste changes as you grow. And
mhm,
me and you, we've always were willing to at least try something new just for curiosity or just to see if we like it or not. So
yeah, whether it be RPG or fighting or war simulator or whatever it is
yeah,
we tried them all. And now, as we've grown up, we know what we like, we know what we want to play. Like I'm playing
yeah.
an RPG game because I know I can play that for hours without really having to worry about anything. I
That's why
can
we
know
don't
when
hesitate and not play any more Call of Duty games because we
yeah,
know we're not going to like that anymore.
I haven't played a Call of Duty since Modern Warfare 1 too. So
Yeah,
I mean I like them, get me wrong, and if I played it it'd be fun, but it's not something I'm willing to take the time anymore because that's not what my niche is.
or spend the $60 for it.
Yeah, I know I
Yeah,
just don't have the patience for that anymore. I mean, they're fun, don't get me wrong, it's just not the same. And so I kinda wanna stick to how the games that I like to play as a child. I love playing the Final Fantasies. I love playing, you know, Ninja Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, things like that. So, I mean, I when the Ninja Turtle game came out on the Xbox, I destroyed that game. It was fun because it
yeah,
reminds you
yeah,
of childhood. And a lot of the
yeah.
games we played just remind us of childhood, so I keep playing them.
Well, we'll leave it at that for now. We're looking back fondly at that stuff, but I'll see you again. Hopefully, maybe in the next episode or two. But if not, you'll definitely be joining us at least once a month, and we'll be talking about more retro stuff, and maybe we even talk about the history and stuff and our experiences back then about it. So, thanks for being here and giving us your experience on it.
No problem. Anytime.
Later.
Peace.